is organized in the collaboration of 4 different institutions, and largely Jamia is the center because this research committee came from the effort of Professor Arvinder Ansari and Professor Mohammad Akram. So uh, this is the good time that research committee on minority studies is uh, getting this platform where the Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia and Manu is representing this RC. And we have Indian Sociological Societies, both the important official, Professor Pramjit Singh, he is the president of the society, and Professor Jagan Karade just joined. Welcome you, sir. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, all of you.
So we were, in fact, just waiting to start for you. Without secretary, it was difficult to move. So
extremely, I'm sorry.
That is always the case.
No, thank you.
Like, are we live now?
Yeah, we are going live.
Okay, thank you. We also have colleagues from Democracy Dialogue who, this is a forum which they'll be introducing here. We will begin now. I think for the opening session, we have all the esteemed speaker here and other panelists have already joined. So we will start, and the participants are full. We are also going live. So that will be really good. You will be happy to know that around 700 registrations were done. But we can accommodate on Zoom only 100 members. The others will be able to watch on different social media platforms. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we are doing live there. And we'll be sharing these recorded videos on YouTube later and with all of you. So formally, with the permission of Professor Najma Akhtar, can we start now?
Yes, please do that. Because you need less time for inauguration and more time for discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So welcome you all the panelists, esteemed guests here, and on behalf of Indian Sociological Society, especially Research Committee on Minority Studies, I welcome all of you here in this forum, which is a collaborative forum today. This is a very important and gracious moment for Research Committee on Minority Studies, because Research Committee on Minority Studies has always been important, interdisciplinary. And thankfully, this COVID has given a chance to have people from different background, different research area, but all of them have been working on minority studies one or the other way. So research, as a convener of the Research Committee of Minority Studies, I'm privileged and very, very happy that all of you accepted our invitations on behalf of society and gave your precious time. Let me request Mr. Laik to begin with and briefly introduce about Democracy Dialogue, and we'll move on the next. Mr. Laik, can you quickly brief about this forum?
Very good afternoon, good morning to all the panelists, team panelists, professors, and all the attendees.
आवाज इको हो रही है लेख.
Hello.
Yeah.
अभी ठीक है.
So it's a great privilege for Democracy Dialogue to have collaboration with Jamia Millia Islamia, Maulana Azad National University, and Indian Sociological Society. So we have initiated our forum in the city of Hyderabad. So this is an collaborative initiative of 3 of our friends, myself, Laik Ahmed, Mr. Ziauddin, and Masood. So in the city of Hyderabad, we thought to have a platform wherein we can discuss various issues, pertaining issues of society, pertaining issues of policy, and we can bring some healthy debate, healthy discussion, dialogue among communities, so that we can contribute into that. So this is an humble initiative, and we had launched this in the COVID situation. So as we all know that the crisis will give birth to the opportunities also. So in the crisis of the pandemic, we thought that something we have to initiate. And from long back, we had a discussion regarding these things. We have to have such kind of forum. And in this crisis time, we have started the webinars. From these webinars, we have started, and most probably we may go for some research documentation also. Very soon, we may go for research documentation also on the various public policy issues. So this is a humble initiative we have launched, and in future to come, we will have more dialogue, we will have more interaction with different forums, and also we will document the pertaining issues in the state, in the country, and we will try to contribute into it. So that's the very brief of democracy dialogue. I don't want to just elaborate on the discussion of the democracy, what is the necessity of this, because all esteemed people are here. They understand more than us what is the need and importance of it. So with this, I conclude. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Laik and Mr. Masood, for being here. Why democracy dialogue is there with Indian Sociological Society was the reason that the larger questions which democracy dialogue discusses as a public forum is on minorities and weaker sections, and that brings this forum here. And it has been doing really wonderful in the city of Hyderabad, and the discussion has brought a lot of issues and some policy changes in the state of Telangana. So that is the contribution of this forum. Welcome, Dr. Imtiaz Ansari. If you are ready, can I ask you to briefly introduce about Jamia Millia on behalf of the department, please? Imtiaz.
क्लैरिटी नहीं है जो उनकी थी कल टीवी वालों का, बहुत अच्छा था। क्यों?
इम्तियाज, आवाज आ रही है आपको?
हेलो,
यस यस।
नहीं हाँ सर, महाराष्ट्र का अच्छा था, गवर्नमेंट का तो।
Imtiaz is facing some problem. Let me quickly briefly introduce about Indian Sociological Society's this research committee on minority studies. It is a great pleasure that minority studies was established by Indian Sociological Society. Indian Sociological Society is one of the most vibrant subject association in India, which is globally visible, and good number of faces here in this panel who represent this body. This committee was first discussed to be formed as a research committee in 2006 and 7 when the Harvard conference took place. And since 2006-7, this effort continued by some of my senior and mentors here. One, Professor Muhammad Akram, is one of them who has been greatly pushing this study to be formalized through this forum, because as a student of sociology, we always found that studies on minorities have been missing in Indian sociology. And any student who wanted to do PhD or research in 1990s or 2000 onward, you don't have choices much because you don't find readings, writings, and until such a committee made Muslim as only minority, and not minorities which came up. So this minority study, after 10 years of continuous effort, in 2017, this research committee was accepted by Indian Sociological Society first as ad hoc body, and later it was given 4 years back as a permanent body. It is a very important to know because without having research committee in most universities, this area of study as sub area in sociology is not really promoted, discussed, or supported by senior faculty. Once it is there, now young students and researchers are finding space to work on various minorities in India. We have ample amount of literature on minorities in different contexts in American studies, in European universities, but not in Indian sociology. So through this forum, we had 2-3 important ideas. That first, that let us locate minorities from sociological perspective, which missed in Indian sociology for quite a long time. people have agreement on this, and a lot of debate will take place by these the eminent speaker here. Second, that the space for minorities was only chosen in political, sphere, that when somebody discusses minorities, one would tend to understand this is Muslim, and someone talks about Muslim. From this sociological society forum, we want to deconstruct the metaphor politically which is established there and have a diverse interdisciplinary understanding on minorities. Third is that when it is one of the youngest research committee, through these panel discussions, we are going to come up with, we have planned to come with one annual publications by the forum, by the society. And this panelist speaker, and they are all established global scholar, their contributions will make this research committee very visible and important, recognized in different universities. As far as my limited knowledge is concerned, we know very few universities where courses on minorities are offered, which is a problem, because unless you do not understand minorities in India, all those misconceptions, prejudices, discrimination, which is there in common sense, everyday life, will be remaining part of our family institutions, right? So these are some important points for which this research committee came up. And as a founding member of this committee, as a convener at the present, I'm really thankful to Indian Sociological Society to encourage us and give this research committee as an importance. And perhaps that is one sincere effort that Professor Paramjit Singh, Professor Jagan Kharade, without asking that how much time I have to spare, they gave their consent and said, yes, you go ahead. We stand by this area of study and we'll carry forward. So I'm thankful to all the senior sociologists. When this committee was established, Professor Anand Kumar was president of the society. So this RC should always remain thankful to Professor Anand Kumar, because it was his commitment that this committee came up in existence on paper. And Professor Arvinder Ansari, I'm sorry I'm taking her name because she was a founder convener of this research committee, and I have to acknowledge her contributions. And on that context, she took up initiative, and 5 years back, she organized one national conference in Jamia Millia Islamia as a mid-term research committee conference, and that gave a space to this committee, and we followed up. 2018, we had another international seminar, very successful seminar, and publication of the seminar is under publication process. It took place in Hyderabad in Maulana Azad National Urdu University. And this is the third event we are having as mid-term discussion on behalf of Minority Studies, RC26. Indian Sociological Society is really very proudful, because whenever I discuss with these seniors here, they feel that research committee is very significant and it will play important role. So I end here, and I request Imtiaz quickly, if you want to share something, you are there now, then we'll move on to the guest.
Hello.
आप बोलिए इम्तियाज, आवाज आ रही है?
Good morning, all of you. I'm really sorry because of technical issues I did not join on time, but now I'm here. In the next few minutes, I'm going to discuss just to give a brief detail about the history of Jamia Millia Islamia and the Department of Sociology, and what were the circumstances under which this specific research committee of minority studies of Indian Sociological Society was established. Myself, Imtiaz Ahmad Ansari, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology, and I'm also the co-convener of this Minority Studies Research Committee. So, Jamia Millia Islamia, as we all know, in 2019, it was ranked, overall ranking was 16 in the National Institutional Ranking Framework and 10 in overall university ranking. So, over a period of 100 years, it was established exactly 100 years ago in 1920 at Aligarh, and so in the last 100 years, it has moved from a madrasa, a maktab, to central universities with 9 faculties and offering courses in different disciplines. So in 1920, it was established at Aligarh, and in 1925, it moved to Delhi. Some of the initial founding members of this university was Dr. Mukhtar Ahmad Ansari, Maulana Abdul Bari, Maulana Hussain Ahmad Madni. So they played a great role in establishing this initially maktab, and making great sacrifices and contributions in developing it into a central university in 1988. So the story of the growth of Jamia Millia Islamia from a small institution in the pre-independence India to a central university, which is now located in New Delhi, is a saga of dedication, conviction, and vision of a people who worked against all odds and saw it growing step by step. So they built up the Jamia Millia Islamia stone by stone and by sacrifice and sacrifice. After moving to Delhi, initially it was located at Karol Bagh, and in 1935 the campus was shifted to, some of the departments were shifted to the present location, that is Okhla, in 1935, where many new departments were established. After independence, after the attainment of independence, Jamia continued to grow as an academic institution with a difference. Many foreign dignitaries started visiting Jamia because of its growing popularity. Among those who visited Jamia soon after independence include Marshal Tito in 1954, King Zahir Shah of Afghanistan in 1955, and Prince Mukarram Jah in 1960. From a small institutions in 1962, the University Grants Commission declared Jamia deemed to be university. In 1981, the faculties of humanities and languages, natural sciences, social sciences were founded. In 1983, the Mass Communication Research Center and the Center for Coaching and Career Planning were established. And in 1985, the Faculty of Engineering and Technology and the University Computer Center came into existence. In 1988, by a special act of the Parliament, Jamia Millia Islamia was made a central university. In the list of the faculties, education, humanities, languages and natural sciences, social sciences, engineering and technology. Many new courses and programs has been continuously being added to its different departments, different faculties, as well as the different research centers which were established in the last 10-15 years. Now, with this brief background of the Jamia Millia Islamia, I want to share something about the Department of Sociology and how it came into existence and where it is positioned now. So the Department of Sociology was initially integrated with the Department of Social Work. It was established in 1976, and in 1982 it got separated from the Department of Social Work and was established as an independent Department of Sociology in 1982. Since then, the department has grown in both size and in terms of faculty as well as courses being taught. In the Department of Sociology, undergraduate teaching at the honors, pass and subsidiary courses, master's program, MPhil, PhD, and postdoctoral research have attracted students not only from the different parts of the country, but from some foreign countries as well, like United Kingdom, USA, Africa, Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq. Although Department of Sociology is one of the youngest departments in Jamia, but it is a very vibrant department and always trying to upgrade its courses, making them more relevant and in tune with the needs of the time. Currently, there are 12 permanent faculties along with the non-teaching staff in the department. The Department of Sociology is also unique in the sense that it provides because Jamia provides an infrastructure and an ambience where interaction with students could extend beyond the classroom. Experimenting with new pedagogies, extending teaching to a learning experience, and not just confined to the classrooms, but beyond the classroom situation has been one of the greatest assets of the department. Participatory sociology has opened up new system of evaluation where students have been panelists and teachers have provided audience to the students. Sociology department in Jamia is made up of Am I audible? Okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
So,
Quickly.
Sociology Department Jamia is made up of faculty and staff who are energetically and effectively engaged in teaching, research, and community building. Now, coming to this specific field of minority studies, many of our faculties in the department, many of our teaching staff in our department are rigorously working in this specific field of minority studies, whether it is related to the question of Muslim alienation, whether it is the question of gender identities and the suffering faced by women in society, or the exploitation and the discrimination and marginalization faced by the Dalits in Indian society. We have specific courses designed to question or to find answers to all these questions of minority studies and their problems. Like we have papers on gender studies, we have paper on ethnicity and minority studies, we have paper on Islam in South Asia. So we have designed this department has specifically designed some of the courses, keeping in mind the current requirements of the academic fraternity, and especially the problems which are central concern to the minority communities. Now, this specific research committee, minority studies, was formally launched in 2014 at the Banaras conference in 2014. Although the conception was much more initially, it was in Dharwad in 2009 when this idea was conceptualized that Indian Sociological Society must have a research committee on minority issues. But finally, it was in 2014 that this idea was came into reality, and the first meeting or the discussion was organized at Kashi Vidyapith in 2014 ISS conference. Among its founding members of this Minority Studies Research Committee are Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, Professor Anand Kumar, Professor Mohini Anjum, Professor Muhammad Akram, and Professor Ghulam Dastagir from Pondicherry, Professor Ravinder Ansari from Jamia Millia Islamia. So these were some of the founding members, and there are many more, but these are some of the founding members of the this ad hoc research committee, which came into existence in 2014. Now it continued as an ad hoc committee for the next 4 years, and in 2017, the ad hoc committee minority studies got converted into permanent research committee of ISS in 2017, which is now the RC26 of Indian Sociological Society. In these 6 years, from 2014 to 2020, the research committee in minority studies organized. This is the third, we can say, kind of midterm conference. But the first midterm conference was organized in 2015 at Jamia Millia Islamia, and it was titled as Minority Studies Shifting Paradigm. And later on, in the same year, at the Tezpur Conference of Indian Sociological Society in 2015, the proceedings of the conference were published in the form of a book, which is titled that Being a Minority, Issues and Challenges. So this is exactly what was the initial plan, that minorities, this research committee should bring light not only the issues of religious minorities, but also how these the new forms of minorities which have emerged or been conceptualized, whether it's the question of disability or whether it is a question of aged and the women minorities. So in 2015, this book was launched at Tezpur Conference of Indian Sociological Society. Second midterm conference of this Minority Studies Research Committee was organized at Maulana Azad National Urdu University. And today, this is the third kind of midterm conference in collaboration with Democracy Dialogue, Department of Sociology, Jamia Millia Islamia, and Maulana Azad National Urdu University. So this is in brief a kind of history of how this idea conceptualized of minority studies, and we need to move forward. We have to think about it, how this research committee can be strengthened, and what are the issues, what are the research themes which needs to be taken by the people working in this field, or especially in how we can make it the research committee a more kind of an organized, how can it strengthen the organizational structure of the research committee so that we can further take up some of the important issues which needs to be investigated and researched. So with these words, I welcome all of you as co-convener of this research committee on minority studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Imtiaz. It was very elaborative, and you reminded that we got to know about Jamia Millia Islamia. As a student, alumni of Jamia Millia Islamia, it is always nice to hear about Jamia's glory Thank you so much. Professor Shahida, ma'am, in 2 minutes, can we quickly, can you introduce about Manu as collaborator? All of
Good
us
morning,
know-
everybody. Zia, 2 minutes, you want me to devote to introduce such a vast university which is established with a special act of Parliament in 1998. And to say quickly, I want to just, like leave major things only I'm going to really cover here. We have 6 schools like language, School of Commerce and Management, School of Arts and Social Sciences, School of Sciences, School of Education and Training, and School of Technology. We also have schools, and we also have, model schools, We also have polytechnic, not only in Hyderabad, but we are also located in different parts of India. Like we have around 9 regional centers, 5 SRC sub-regional centers, 161 study centers, wherein DD especially, we have the dual mode, mode of education here. Regular mode, we have lot of, and then apart from that, Manu is really serving the minority community in a very special way. I can say that it has spread in India far and wide. It is regional centers and study centers and sub-regional centers catering to the minority speaks Urdu. We have a mandate promote and develop Urdu language and then impart education and training with Urdu medium in vocational and technical education through medium of instruction. As I told you, Urdu. And we also provide wider access to people who wants to pursue higher education with Urdu medium. And the last objective, or we have, one of the most important objectives of the university is to promote women education, and which university is really doing it. I can say that what Central Committee has recommended, we are doing exactly the same by imparting technical education, by running polytechnics in various parts of India. So also the professional courses in wider parts of India. We, the Department of Women Education, have been, associated with ZIA, with Democracy Dialogue and RC, Minority Studies, today to really highlight the problems of minority women. And that I'll come later. But today I would like to say that Maulana Azad University is not only catering to the higher education, but also from the school to the polytechnic, to the technical education and school of training and research. We have lot of UG, PG, diploma and certificate courses being offered under this banner. Thank you, Zia. I think I cannot go beyond this because of the time constraints. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You made my time manage because obviously we are waiting for the speakers to hear, but all of the collaborators are important to be brought in because the kind of background and importance they have. In keeping this continuity, I request now, before we go ahead, to request Professor Najma Akhtar, Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia, I request on behalf of Indian Sociological Society, Professor Jagan Karade to introduce about the society and give your thought onto this. Professor Jagan Karade, can you come in, please? Sir, I'll take 1 minute. Professor Jagan Karade, I'll take 1 minute. Please allow me. Let me introduce. Professor Jagan Karade is not only Secretary of Indian Sociological Society, but he is a professor and head in the Department of Sociology at Shivaji University, Maharashtra, located at Kolhapur. He has been one of the active Indian sociologists in entire Maharashtra. I always see his presence in different academic forum and writings. He works in the area of social movements, marginalization, exclusion, and minorities. I recall that Professor Jagan Karade conducted a very huge research project on these minority institutions in India. I have no idea about minority institutions historical background, but I remember that Maharashtra is one of the states where minority institution has emerged heavily and contributing in the nation building process. So Professor Jagan Karades presents as a sociologist fill that gap which is not there in Indian sociology. So on with this brief introduction, I request Professor Karade to go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Jia. First of all, I am very much thankful to Professor Jia as well as the two universities and the collaborative activities and organize the webinar on exploring minority studies, interdisciplinary perspective. I respected the Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia University, Professor Najma Akhtar ma'am. Then the Vice Chancellor of Maulana Azad National Urdu University, Hyderabad, Professor Fatima Begum ma'am. Then our President of Indian Sociological Society, Professor Paramjit Singh Judge, and my dear friends. First of all, I am very thankful to Professor Jia, who is the convener of the minority studies, as well as Arvind Ansari also. And they are thinking about the minorities, the development. And on this perspective, they organize one the national webinar. I will focus on, as a student of sociology, as a faculty member of sociology, I will focus on my presentation, my observation, my views regarding with that. And basically, I will focus on the concept of minority in India, myth and reality. Basically, when we're thinking about the minority, and in the recent period, each and every country in the world, they have focusing on the concept of minority and majority. And first of all, we should learn about the minority means this is the mathematical term. And that's why when we're thinking about the mathematical term, those using by each and every country, and in Indian context also, our constitution as well as government, they are thinking about the development of minorities communities. When we're thinking about the pre-independence period, so many challenges was there, so many challenges regarding with the equality in terms of socially, educationally, economically. And that's why we adopted the development theory of inclusive policy. And that's why our constitution has made provision for the reservation policy for SC, ST, and OBCs also, and some provisions for minorities. And after these so many minority communities also, they are taking some benefit of the minorities. And after I think 1991, and one special case, I will focus on that issues regarding with the PA Inamdar versus Government of Maharashtra and others. So in this way, when we're thinking about, I will, 1 minute, I will share my documents also, means my presentation regarding with that. So, 1 minute. I think it is not comfortable for that, but I will focus on the constitution made provisions for minorities and constitution thinking about the article number 29 and article number 13. This article number 29 and 13 has given right for the article number 29 says that any section of the citizen residing in the territory of India or any part of having a distinct the language, script, and culture, and of his own shall have right to conserve the same. And article number 30, the all minorities, whether based on religion or language, shall have the right to establish an administrative educational institution of their choice. These two articles, which provided the rights for minorities communities. And now we will think about, particularly in Indian context, the minorities. There are two types of the minorities. The one is the religious minorities, and according to the central government, there are 5 religious minorities, which are Muslim, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Parsis also. And one another the minorities created by Mr. A.R. Antule when he was the Ministry of Minority Affairs, that Jain also be given status of minority. So after that, when we're thinking about the linguistic minority, according to the 38 report of the National Commission, there are 30 languages under the minority status. 30. When we look about particularly the Supreme Court cases regarding with the minority education institutions and minority rights, there are Islamic Academic of Education, these 5 benches. The second one, St. Stephen's College versus University of Delhi, 7 benches. 7 benches means judge, 7 judges. Then Unni Krishnan JP versus State of Andhra Pradesh. Then St. Xavier College Society, Ahmedabad versus State of Gujarat. Then TMA Pai Foundation and others versus State of Karnataka and others. These are the 11 benches. And the last one, the judgment given by Supreme Court on the PA Inamdar versus Government of Maharashtra. These Supreme Court having 7 benches. Means, first of all, when we look the TMI Foundation, these was that was 11 benches, means 11 judges was there, were there. But after that, 7 benches, these the case has a 7 benches given the judgment on P. Inamdar versus Government of Maharashtra and others. I think these, when we look particularly the historical sketch of the minority studies, then as a student of sociology, there's some questions related with that, which I raise. The various aspects related with the minorities, which are education, linguistic, economic, legal, social, and political also. Means multiple perspective regarding with the minority concept. And that's why when we look at particularly educational development of minorities, then second thing, we should think about also the perspective regarding with the legal perspective, social perspective, political perspective. And the second question is causes of increase the minority educational institutions. Why they have increased and who are they? Because this is the very, very important. Why they have established minority educational institutions and what are the objective for that? And the third one is the effect of Supreme Court case of P. Inamdar versus Government of Maharashtra, is judgment given gave on 12th August 2005. The very important thing behind that, before this case, only 380 education institutions have created as a minority education institution. But after that, 2,500 applications received by Minority Commission for minority status. So these is the very, very important. And when we look particularly the conclusion regarding with that, or not before that, we should think about the minority. As a student, raise some questions regarding with the who are minorities, because this statistical or the mathematical term minority and majority. But basically, when we're thinking about the population based on culture, based on language, based on script, based on culture, but the sum as a part, as a larger part, as a women, they have not treated as a minority, because they are differently when we on the gender basis, they are minority. So, but they have not treated as a minority. Another thing is that these so many languages as like Thakari, Kokani, these languages not treated as a minority. On mathematical term also, when we use the term regarding with the Thakari and Kokani language, they have not treated as a minority. The another thing is that the many minority education institutions are not following the rules of Constitution of India as well as right to information. Because when I took the survey on particular on that issues, at that time they are not given they are not given the proper information, and this is that the RTI also not implemented in our institutions. I have no objection. I have no objection. Those institutions following the rules and regulations those made by Constitution of India. But I have a more object to those institutions not implementing the rules and regulations made by Constitution of India. And as per my knowledge, these institutions also established by the non-minorities people. They have taken the status of minority, but they are non-minority people. So that's why. And another thing is that the many minority educational institutions not enroll their own minority students in the educational institutions, especially in the linguistic minority. I think in the recent period, we are well known about each and every education institutions focus on the money matters. And that's why they have took the status from the government of India as well as state government, but they are not given the opportunity on their own minority students. So this is the question. And the another is the this is the reality. And when we're thinking about who is the higher authority, who is the declarer, this is the minority community, the central government or state government. Yet it is not, I think there's so many confusion regarding with that, because sometimes the central government also declare the Muslim as a the minority communities, and Sikhs means 5 religious communities. These are the minority communities, but simultaneously, some states as like Punjab. In Punjab, Sikh are a majority, and when we look particularly Kerala. In this Kerala, the Christian community, the state government declared the Christian community is a majority. And when we look particularly Jammu and Kashmir, in that state, the Muslims treated as a majority. So this is the confusion in between the declaration, those declared by central government, these are the minorities, but state government says that no, these are the majority in our state. So this is the confusion. And the another thing is that basically the concept of minority, which the object of the concept of minority and their rights, which is the minority is a subordinates group. They have depressed in particularly society. And that's why the constitution has a given right. But in the recent period, the dominant caste and dominant communities also, they have the more benefit of the minority communities, and they have established their educational campus, and they are not given the opportunity to their own minority communities. So as per my knowledge, when we're thinking about the national and international criteria of the minority, the international the definition, international scenario, they are given the opportunities to the minorities, those who have a subordinate group, those who have the deprived group, a depressed group, and for that they are providing the security as well as the provided facilities to the development of the minority. I think it is a very important in our Indian, particularly Indian context. The Indian context, we are thinking about only and only mathematical terms. These are the minorities and these are the majorities. But when we're thinking about the particular, the subordination and the domination, those who have declared as a minority is also. So that's why, because as per my knowledge, and the another question is regarding with that. Can we provide security in the forest, tiger or lions? Because they are the mathematical term, when we using the term regarding with the animals or the tiger and lions, they are minority. But in the particularly, they command to the whole forest. In this way, in our society also, these some communities as like a tiger, as like a lion, and they are creating so many benefits from the Constitution of India, in India, and they have misused their rights. So that's why this is the questions. My questions, another questions is regarding with the, after independence period, there's so many confusion or the misusing the right of the minority, especially linguistic minority, because each and every state declare this is the majority, the portion, but these portions also means each and every person, those migrated to the another state at that time, this person treated as a minority, linguistic minority, not religious, but linguistic minority. Means, as per my knowledge, as a student of sociology, in particular the concept of minority, each and every person can treated as a minority. Each and every person when shifted to the another state. Means, for example, I am Maharashtrian, but when I shifted to Delhi, shifted to Kerala, shifted to Punjab and another, at that time, I am treated as a minority, linguistic minority, and I will be taken the benefit of the minority. So that's why when we're thinking about the concept of minority, it is a very, very, they have taken the misuse. Some minority education institutions have taken the misuse of this right. And when we're thinking about my conclusion, these are the 4 points of the conclusions. The one is there is a no conceptual clarity of the concept of minority. Here, I have a letter, those declared by Government of India, Minority Commission, New Delhi, and especially signed by Under Secretary J.L. Kanojia. So these letter says that, I will read the one para, which is the very, very important. I am directed to refer to your letter number, means this letter sent to Assistant Secretary, the Government of Maharashtra, General Administration Department, Mantralaya. And in this letter, they have mentioned, I am directed to refer to your letter, so and so, on the subject noted above, and to say that the term minority community has not been defined in the Constitution or in any other enhancement. Means if the government said that the minority concept has not defined, but earlier I given the so many references or the so many cases, those given judgment by the Supreme Court cases. They are thinking about, means 7 benches, 8 benches, 11 benches. They are discussing on the right of the minority. But as a student of sociology, if the minority concept has not clearly defined, so how we can think about the right? So I think this is the very, very important regarding with the conclusion. Another is only 3 points are there.
Yeah.
The many minority education institutions are not following the rules and regulation Constitution of India and RTA also. And the third one is they have not enrolled their own minority students. And the number third is number of professional colleges. Number of professional colleges and institutions run by non-minority committees in these states. Means the non-minority students, non-minority communities, they having taken the misuse of the minority concept. And that's why the original minority communities, they're having so far from development. So that's why we should think about, deliberately think about the concept and their rights, their criteria. And I'm sure Professor Jia and his team will be focusing on such particularly the development of minorities and their rights. Thank you. I am very much thankful to Professor Jia and their team for inviting me in the inaugural program. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, on behalf of Indian Sociological Society, and it was very elaborative. I'm sorry, I have to request you to conclude because we have, all of them there.
Yeah, I know.
Not to say, but as a secretary of the society, also your presentation first was very important to see the background. With this, I now. Before I invite Professor Najma Akhtar, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia, I also welcome Professor Tanveer Fazal, who is a professor at University of Hyderabad, Professor Amirullah Khan, who is there in the panel from Hyderabad MCHRD, it's a state government reported institutions. Professor Rowena Robinson she has also joined from IIT Mumbai. She is a panelist and great scholar in the area of sociology of minorities. Professor Najma Akhtar, born in 1953. I'll take 1 minute, ma'am.
Don't. Please don't.
And she is an Indian academic administrator. She joined as Vice Chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia in 2019 April. She has studied from Aligarh Muslim University, where she was a gold medalist and National Science Talent Scholarship. She finished her PhD from Kurukshetra, received her Commonwealth Fellowship to study at University of Warwick in UK, and she also went to Paris in environmental policy studies. After working for over 15 years at NIPA, National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, which is now a central university, she joined at various other institutions. And as many of us know as a reader through the column and about her writings, Professor Akhtar has been an advocate for gender equity. She is known for leading teams of diverse cultural background. On her appointment as the first female vice chancellor of Jamia Millia Islamia on 99 years of its history, she once said, which I quote from a newspaper, "My aim was not to break the glass ceiling, but I was definitely against the glass ceiling. Why is it even there if you hold the same educational qualification and experiences?" So, unquote. This shows that her commitment towards equity and issues of minorities in India. With this brief, on behalf of Indian Society and Minority Studies, I welcome you, ma'am, here and request you to give your inaugural address.
Vice Chancellor of Maulana Azad National Urdu University, Professor Fatma, officials of the Indian Sociological Society and of Jamia and Jamia Sociology Department, as well as experts and officials and professors from all the universities who have joined, and I could see a galaxy of experts here. And I'm very impressed by the collection that has attracted this dialogue. This group has attracted and people who have interest in the minority studies. This gives me a lot of hope. I think, can I say good afternoon now? Not good morning anymore. And first of all, I'd like to express my thanks for being invited to this inaugural session. I also welcome the panelists with a robust hope that promising ideas will emerge from this discourse. Minority studies is a sub-area of the crucial importance of sociology. So talking about the studies today is an appropriate thing, and as I heard, this group has evolved in several years and has come to a very important place now. Cannot be ignored anymore. Minority issues has been attracting the attention of the scholars from long back. They have been debated across the subjects and political domains. It is so because the preservation of distinctive identities strengthen the nation. And if you are interested in nation, we have to be interested in minorities. For minorities, the Constitution of India has envisaged a number of rights and safeguards in the fundamental rights, directive principles of state policy, and also the fundamental duties. Linguistic minorities issue is addressed through, and religious minority issue has been addressed through the establishment of the National Commission for Minority Education Institutions, NCMEI, and this shows the interest the government has in the minority issues. We treated them differently at a different platform, because this was a much needed commission, much needed institution which had come up in 2004. I believe minority studies should be one of the major focus of all educational programs and all institutions. It is needed by students to understand themselves and the social world in which they live. The minority experience is a part of the human experience, and education should deal with the total experience of human beings. As far as I know, there are 13,555 educational institutions which have been granted minority status by the National Commission of Minority Educational Institutions till July 2020. These minority institutions are either based on language or religion, as the Indian Constitution recognizes minority based on these two parameters. The basic purpose of the establishment of minority educational institution is to protect the language and culture and development and welfare of the minority communities concerned. Minority educational institutions, because the earlier speakers have talked a lot about minority in CMAI and how this has actually slowly evolved. The minority educational institutions, especially the higher educational institutions, have to play a more active role in research relating to minority issues. Educating minorities is part of the process of national development. In this feat, the responsibility of these institutions, which are of course the educational institutions, is more, since they are especially established for the welfare of the minorities, and they are the ones who know where the shoe pinches. We have a number of successful examples of minority institutions which have played significant role not only addressing the educational backwardness of the minorities, but also acting as the model of secular institutions. This balance has to be maintained by minority institutions. They have to maintain this balance, and they may be institutions for welfare of minorities, but they should not turn themselves only for minority institutions. I can say with pride that my institution, Jamia Millia Islamia, has been able to successfully blend the role in addressing the educational aspirations of India's largest religious minority, as well as it is a secular institution which has active participation in the nation building through education, which it is in fact started with this by the active participation in nation building. As well known, the vision of Jamia is to create a human universe that offers inclusiveness, equity, fellowship, justice, and for one and all. So this program which is being held today is rightly there, not only because the Department of Sociology is very active in it, but also rightly there in an institution which is on these lines. Jamia Millia Islamia originated, as one of the friends has already told, as the movement of a struggle for education and cultural renaissance against the colonial regime and for evolving a national culture for the common Indian. Its foundation is to promote patriotism and national integration among Indians who will be proud to take part in future progress of India. I feel delighted to mention that today Jamia has become has made a spectacular performance in the NIRF ranking. So it's not simply a central university, it is one in the top 10 universities of India. It now figures in the top 10 universities of India. Very proudly we say that all the Jamia people and those who have been associated with it in any form. There's higher responsibility upon the minority institutions, because we are going to talk about it during this discourse, to provide maximum outreach to the higher education, especially targeting for minority women, because that is one area where you have to put in more effort for sociologically poor, particularly from sociologically poor background and economically poor background. Right since its inception, Jamia has embraced this idea of co-education and healthy mixing and growth of both the genders together, because they cannot be dealt in isolation. Women have all the opportunities to fulfill their aspirations and cultivate their interest unhindered by any kind of discriminatory practices. The Government of India has always been consistent to provide financial and policy support to the minority students wherever they are. The most celebrated scheme for the central government is Maulana Azad National Fellowship for minority students for registered research students in universities that aim to nurture the young mind into research and innovation in India. And this is something which we need the maximum now. In this situation that we have, we need a lot of innovation, and people from all walks of life should come together, and every university, all the universities which are either minority or not minority, they have to give importance to the innovation part of the students, which they have to learn to innovate from while they are still in the university. Today, two central universities, JMI and Manu, and all others, other universities, I have collaborated through the respective departments with Indian Sociological Society and Democracy Dialogue. And I'm happy that such groups are coming up and have already established in the field of knowledge, and they keep coming together, because I could see the frequency of the seminars and webinars and coming together in groups discussing researches, because when you come together, you know what your other colleague is doing, and what you are known is also known to them. So it's always good to keep on learning. I particularly mentioned the name of Professor Fatma Begum today. In this group which is sitting here today, there are two vice chancellors, and both of them are women. So they belong to institutions which are particularly from minorities, catering to minority, although not exclusively. The establishment of minority studies is a welcome decision of the Indian Sociological Society, and those people who are pushing it ahead, they need my congratulations for that, particularly my own university people who are taking it ahead. I wish this panel discussion, which is very timely and appropriate to be done today, this panel discussion and seminar comes out with a brilliant publication sooner or later that can add invaluable chapters in the direction of minority studies in India, because you have to take the initiative. I would also request you, before I say thank you, and if such a group of eminent people have come together, they should not take much time in getting a publication out, because if we take several years, things already start getting stale, and therefore it should be a quick publication, and without compromising on quality, but the quickness has to be there. And there should also be I do not know whether there's an exclusive journal on minority studies which is coming out, and if it is not, maybe Jamia can take an initiative on that and start a journal where publication of not only the established people but also of the young people. And
thank you, we can do.
So you can take the initiative in that, and I'm sure there are optional courses in Jamia on minority studies, PCS courses like this. mainly focusing on minorities, not only studies, but minority in general. And
So, ma'am, only Department of Sociology has that one.
okay, but you can offer it as a CBC as well.
Yeah, we can.
Because an engineer also should know how, what are the problems of minorities and his role in the future of India.
We have CBCS course, diversities and inequalities. We have CBCS course, diversities and
So
inequalities.
we just cover it up. We don't say minorities. That's anyway. That is. So thank you very much for having me here and giving me an opportunity to listen to such eminent people. I go back enlightened because of that. And thank you very much. And I hope this
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
becomes very vibrant and comes out with a publication, which will be there for years and years. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. And the last two important advices going to strengthen this army is the advice for going for publications, and second on if Jamia itself can take initiative of having a journal. We have journal on minority studies, but we are not focused in that way and catering the way Jamia can take initiative in leadership, because Jamia is also a minority institution. So that is prerogative of Jamia Millia Islamia, but your advice is welcome one. And these guests are on, I mean, all of them are established scholar on minorities. And in any scope, if they are able to give and give a draft of their ideas and thought, that will definitely be one important contributions, lifelong contribution for this art. Because we know generally in annual conferences, we will not never have such galaxy of speakers and experts at annual conferences, but today we have. I'll be really one of the most privileged person that my senior and mentors here are able to contribute and help us with a good publications. And you'll be happy to know that Sage publication got idea about this panel discussion, and they were asking that, are you also coming up with a volume? We will be happy to come up. So I don't know, but I raised this idea my eminent speaker here, and I look forward for their support. The other point which ma'am has said, that Manav is one of the important key tools, Maulana Azad National Fellowship, where students from minority communities across the country have come up because they got some fellowship in the society background of students. And now we find a number of students coming up with the ideas and trying to do research on minorities. So a great talk and great idea from Professor Najma Akhtar, and the way head of a minority institution about what kind of role and responsibility an institution name of minority should have. So on behalf of society, we thank you so much for your thoughtful talk. Moving on now, I request my ma'am from Department of Arvinder ma'am, can you mute your sound? Yeah. Now, may I request, and before I request Professor Fatima, Vice Chancellor of Maulana Azad National Urdu University, where I am a faculty of the university, it is a great privilege for me to have Vice Chancellor of Manu, which Professor Najma Akhtar shared that it is the rarest occasion when two women Vice Chancellor leading two different kind of minority institution. One is minority, other is a linguistically Urdu university, which is located in Hyderabad. And sure enough, Indian Sociological Society will never have or rarely have such occasion where these kind of collaborations are there with the presence of Vice Chancellor. So it is a privilege to have Professor Fatima Begum. She has been very active and dynamic. She has been one of the professor in education who advocated learning in higher education through Urdu, and that too in national studies like educational studies in Manu. All of you must be happy to know that Maulana Azad National Urdu University, where she was a dean also, has 7 different off-campus, we call it CTs, College for Teacher Training Education. We also have 3 off-campuses social sciences colleges.
based in Lucknow, Srinagar, and Bihar. We also have 5 polytechnic. This is rarest. Central University is also catering the largest population of one of the largest minority groups in India, where we have polytechnics. So we have polytechnic at Hyderabad, Bihar, Bhopal. We have Bangalore, Cuttack in Andhra Pradesh. And these are the rare and noble initiative of Urdu University, where the government of India has supported generously to establish the new campuses. And most important is that the kind of student we have at Urdu University will not be in other university across the country, because those who are coming to Urdu University they have to come from having a basic minimum Urdu medium understanding. So those who have studied Urdu as their language throughout education or at the school level. So the kind of student we cater, the kind of student we create and produce is rarest in the country, and they come up with in the process of nation building. Because when you talk about minority, we need to talk about Muslims, who are largest minority in terms of economically and socially backward communities in India. So Professor Fatima Begum is the vice chancellor of such university, where she is giving a dynamic face. And I welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of Indian Sociological Society, Research Committee on Minority Studies, and on my behalf also as a junior most colleague of the university, that you gave your consent on a holiday, because it is very difficult, and I know you have been working throughout day because of the transition in our university. So I request you to talk on, I don't know whether this title was right, but if you talk on linguistic institution in India with reference to National Urdu University. Professor Fatima Begum.
Thank you, Mr. Zia. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can
yes.
you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Dear Professor Najma Akhtar, Vice Chancellor, Jamia Millia Islamia, Professor Jagan Karade, Secretary, Indian Sociological Society, Professor Paramjit Singh Judge, and all distinguished participants of this important national event. The topic assigned to me is not assigned, just suggested, linguistic institutions in India, a case of National University, National Urdu University. See, actually, what I want to say is, instead of dealing with linguistic institutions, it's better to deal with the institutions of higher education, providing education through the medium of Indian languages. We have different universities exclusively providing educational facilities in regional languages. Like in Andhra Pradesh, we have one university, Padmavati University, which is Telugu University, provides the instruction through the medium of Telugu. And we are a university, we are providing through the medium of Urdu, and we have a university, international university, that is Antarrashtriya Hindu University, that is in Wardha. So we have universities, institutions of higher education where the medium of instruction is not English, which is generally. Now, considering the increase in the spread of higher education in India, it is important to look at the issue of medium of instruction in higher education, not only through the lens of educational efficacy, but also taking into account its role in social and political determination for the following reasons. I have taken into consideration the 3 reasons. First, the language acts as the entry point as well as the barrier in the process of higher education. Second, the discourse of higher education significantly impacts the conduct of primary and secondary education. Third, language determines who creates knowledge for whom is it created and the problems it seeks to solve. Now, we at Maulana Azad National Urdu University, we are facing, I just wish to bring to the knowledge of the audience the problems we face when we start institutions of higher education through the medium which is not English, through the medium of regional languages or Indian languages. Actually, the problem is with the textbooks, material for the students to study. Medium is something. And we in Hyderabad, actually, way back in 1916, a proposal was there through a farman. Usmania University was established through the medium of Urdu. And it was a great venture, like everywhere English was ruling. Even in primary schools, there was a struggle to start through vernacular medium, medium of vernacular languages to be the medium of instruction. But at that time, it was a great experiment which was carried on in Hyderabad to start a university through the medium of Urdu. And a lot of effort, lot of struggle went on in creating material in Urdu. The Nizam of Hyderabad, he was very much interested in promoting, in promoting education. So he brought people from different places, different walks of life, and got good books translated in Urdu, and he established a big library in Urdu. And in those days, we had not only general education, but professional courses like engineering, medicine, and law through the medium of Urdu. But the emphasis was not only just to promote Urdu or to provide education through the medium of Urdu, but simultaneously English was also given more importance. Nobody was lagging behind in English. So people who graduated or then did their studies through the medium of Urdu, they went to England and Oxford and other universities, and there they excelled. So it was, we should not focus only on the medium of instruction or vernacular or some particular language. We have to give importance to English also. English, without English, it is difficult to gain knowledge that is produced in different parts of the world. So I think one Tata Institute, we have Tata Institute, Mr. Professor Abdul Shaban. I think in Tata Institute, they set up a center for overseeing production of material in Indian languages for higher education in humanities. A gathering organized by the center discussed the feasibility and modalities of increasing the presence of Indian languages in higher education. Discussions focused on the inadequacy of Indian languages, production of dictionaries, features, pedagogic development, digital archives, and compilation of existing material and archives. Such proceedings will help us move beyond the why to the how. That means why we are doing this. Instead of focusing on why we are doing something, we must focus on how can we do it. Because now we are in National University, Maulana Azad National Urdu University. We have 17 satellite campuses, and the what you say, the hub of this university is the School of Education and Training, we should say. It is known, regular courses are known because of the School of Education and Training. Apart from the Department of Education, we have 8 colleges of teacher education in different parts of the country, starting from Srinagar to Haryana to Bhopal, then Uttar Pradesh, Sambhal, then we have Asansol, we have in Bihar, Darbhanga, then we have in Aurangabad, Bidar, like that. We are spread all over India. But the problem we are facing is we are not getting the students actually to be teachers, to teach Urdu medium, you must be well versed with the language, not only speaking, but you must have the knowledge to produce the material in Urdu, to lecture in Urdu, to use technical terms in Urdu. That we are not getting people like that. We need students actually from primary level. If we get good students, primary, secondary, then tertiary, they will be well versed with the language. But that is the thing we are lagging behind. We feel that is the deficiency in our input. We are getting from Hindi background. Lots of students are Hindi background. They can speak Urdu, but they cannot write properly. They cannot use technical terms in Urdu. So to make any higher education institution successful, we must first have to start from the beginning. Like it should start from the primary level. It should be strong primary level, secondary level, then they can go to the university. But as such, we have started we can call it building without pillars. We have a building at higher level, but we don't have support from primary level. We must have a strong support from primary level, then only people will be fluent in the language, they know the technical terms in Urdu. Even when we studied, we used to get Urdu books, good technical terms. Now we don't find even in Urdu medium, whether it is school books or intermediate books or any level, we don't find proper technical terms in Urdu. I'm particular about Urdu because this is my concern. So students are coming with poor knowledge of Urdu. Just they can speak Urdu, they have qualification in Urdu, but they don't have sound base in Urdu. So for any higher education to successfully serve the purpose, we need to have a strong input. Input should be very strong. And these are the problems. If we start any higher education institution through the medium other than English, we have the problem of deficiency of books. There are no proper books, and we must get a good feeding also from lower level. So these are the problems we are facing, but we are hopeful that as we have started Urdu University, people are learning Urdu. People are learning not only in our university, but they are learning elsewhere also, thinking that there is future for Urdu. So let us hope that our vernacular languages also get importance, because in rural areas, people don't have much access to English medium schools. But as soon as they enter into tertiary level, they have to cope with the English language. It is difficult, as Gandhiji had once said, the child has to understand the language first, then he has to understand the subject. So it is a double difficulty for him to understand the language, what the teacher is saying, and to understand the subject. Especially in sciences, it's very difficult. So always medium of instruction through the medium of mother tongue is desirable, but we should not neglect English also. But because we want to promote our Indian languages, we must have our higher education through the medium of Indian languages. At the same time, we should not neglect English. English should also be made strong. So with this, I don't want to take much time. There is a lot to speak about linguistic institutions, but I think in the discussions and all, people will discuss about it. And this minority, this what you say, you can't call it a minority, but linguistic institutions are in number, as Professor was saying, Professor Paramjit was saying, it is a numerical minority. institutions of higher education are only, we can count it on fingers. Only a few are there. But if we get proper study material, then it can be run successfully. But the thing is, people think there is no material, no textbook, why to go for these institutions? But who should start? Whether the egg will come first or the chicken will come first? Something we should start somewhere. Without any delay of time. And thank you all, and my best wishes to the organizers for a successful completion of this. And thank you.
Zia, are you able to hear Zia? Zia, कुछ बोल रही नहीं.
Zia?
Zia, are you able to hear?
Sorry, I'm here.
Yeah, thank the Vice Chancellor. She has finished with her.
Thank you. Yeah, I got disconnected. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor Fatma. Ma'am, you really brought out how Manu has an important role to play, and this gives a comparison of Manu and Jamia Millia Islamia, where two universities could be very important in terms of an institutions, and both placed very differently in terms of its role. With this, I thank Professor Fatma, and I am also thankful to Professor Shahida, because she was from this university, head of the women education, who came forward and said, let's go ahead from, on behalf of Department of Women Studies from Manu. So that makes more importance to these collaborations. Now we have last speaker of this session, of opening session, Professor Paramjit Singh. Before I invite him, I'll take 1 minute to introduce him. He is a president of Indian Sociological Society for last 1 year. And I see he has over almost 38 years of teaching in different universities, Nehu, Northeast Hill University. He has been Punjab Institute of Public Administration. He worked at Center for Social Studies at Surat and Guru Nanak. At present, he is at Guru Nanak Dev Amritsar University. His important contribution in the area is political sociology of social movements, social change, diaspora studies, Dalits and social exclusion, and also on classical sociology. Apart from this, I follow some of the writing, even in fact, anyone who follows his Facebook writing, that is not less than an article, where he has been very vocal in writing about it. We have very few scholars who have courage to write on Facebook at the moment, because the kind of situation prevails at the moment. But Professor Paramjit Singh has been one mentor who encourages minority studies. That makes very important. I need not to introduce him, because across the country, he was unanimously chosen the president of Indian Sociological Society. So I welcome you, sir, on behalf of your research committee on minority studies and all the collaborators here. Please start your talk into this.
Thank you, Professor Jayuddin, Professor Nazma Akhtar, Professor Fatma Begum, my dear friend and colleague, Professor Jagan Karade, Professor Ravinder Ansari, I can see Professor Shahida. I think Tanveer Fazal has also joined, all of you and all others who are there. Let me first start with a small comment. In my almost 4 decades of academic career, this is the first time in my life that 2 vice chancellors of 2 universities, they were online at .11 o'clock. This was something. I think it is gender which makes the difference. Now I am not surprised that those countries which have effectively controlled pandemic are headed by women. With all this, you know, and looking at the time, I hope I will not take much time. I will talk about in parts. And since so many things have been said, I would like to talk about Constituent Assembly debates from where the issue of minorities came up. Now, let me start with first that who were the minorities identified in Constituent Assembly debates? They were identified in terms of percentage of population, no doubt about it. So Muslims were the first, and then Christians, then Sikhs, then Anglo-Indians, Parsis. These were this thing, but then they added scheduled castes. Tribes came under a very different schedule, so therefore this was something which was done. Now, after having said that, I will move on to November 4, 1948, when Professor B.R. Ambedkar delivered a speech to start the discussion on the draft constitution, which was submitted to the members of the Constituent Assembly in February 1948. The day was November 4, 1948. It is a long lecture which was debated, but he also said something about minorities. So I will quote him. He said, "I have no doubt that the Constituent Assembly has done wisely in providing such safeguards for minorities as it has done. In this country, both the minorities and majorities have followed a wrong path. It is wrong for the majority to deny the existence of minorities. It is equally wrong for the minorities to perpetuate themselves. A solution must be found which will serve a double purpose. It must recognize the existence of the minorities to start with. It must also be such that it will enable majorities and minorities to merge someday into one. The solution proposed by the Constituent Assembly is to be welcomed because it is a solution which serves the twofold purpose. To diehards who have developed a kind of fanaticism against minority protection, I would like to say two things. One is that minorities are an explosive force which, if it erupts, can blow up the whole fabric of the state. The other is that the minorities in India have agreed to place their existence in the hands of the majority. The moment the majority loses the habit of discriminating against minority, the minorities can have no ground to exist, they will vanish. This lecture was both real and metaphorical, and I will not speak on this particular thing, but I'll come to another moment in the history of Constituent Assembly. This was May 25, 1949, and it was Wednesday. I don't know why I have put that particular thing. Basically, May 25 was the conclusion made, but it was on May 11, 1949, that Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, in his capacity as the chairman, Advisory Committee on Minorities, Fundamental Rights, etc., he submitted his report. I'll just give a few fragments of that. Number one, this is number 3 in the report. When the recommendations, that is a reference to August 1947, were being considered by the Assembly, events were taking place in the partition of the country, which made it impossible to consider the question of minority rights in East Punjab, particularly insofar as the Sikhs were concerned. The question of East Punjab was accordingly postponed, and also the question whether the right to contest unreserved seats should be given to minorities in West Bengal. Although the abolition of separate electorates has removed much of the poison from the body politic, the reservation of seats for religious minority communities, it was felt, did lead to a certain degree of separatism and was to that extent contrary to the conception of a secular democratic state. Accordingly, the advisory committee, with one dissenting voice, passed the said resolution as amended by Shri Muniswamy Pillai in the following term, that the system of reservation for minorities other than scheduled castes in legislature be abolished. One of the notable recommendations of the committee was the recognition to certain castes among the Sikhs as eligible for political reservation. In other words, the Sikh religious community was considered to be at par with the Hindu community. And this whole thing continued for what we call the discussion. Now, most of the Muslim members of the Constituent Assembly, they criticized strongly that you must continue with this thing, otherwise minorities will not be able to develop. But there was one Muslim leader, Naziruddin Ahmad. He was a very well-known Sanskrit scholar. He spoke against reservation for Muslims or minorities. The other person who spoke against reservation was Dr. H.L. Mukherjee, the Vice President of Constituent Assembly. He was Christian. So he said that we do not recommend, we do not want reservation for Christians. This was one. Now let me come to another movement, which is very interesting because I know that other things will be discussed, but I'll bring in a little bit of Sikh issue. Now, on October 13th, 1949, when the amendment of the Article 296 was moved in the House by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, let us look at what it was. He says that the claims of the members of the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes shall be taken into consideration consistently with the maintenance of efficiency of administration in the making of the appointments to services and posts in connection with the affairs of the union or of a state. Hukum Singh brought back to what was happening in 1947. So when this happened, it was not the question of why this was confined to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and what happened during that. One of the members of the Constituent Assembly who was in fact representing Sikhs at that time, later on he joined the Congress party and became Speaker of Lok Sabha, that is Hukum Singh. He said that, this is, before I say what Hukum Singh said is that when the political reservation was abolished for all minorities, then Muslims spoke. Christian representatives said, no, we don't want. Sikhs also supported what Patel said, and in all kinds of praise for Sikhs. But now when in October, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar presented this particular article in the Constituent Assembly, Hukum Singh stood up and he said, it is very unfortunate that the Sikhs for the present cannot persuade themselves to have implicit faith in the party in power. They have reasons for that, for they think that the past record is a record of repudiated promises and broken pledges. Suppose for the sake of argument that I am wrong, that this is incorrect, and that the present leaders can be trusted to do justice to everybody, then is there any guarantee that the present leaders will continue for all time to come? Are there not indication, even no apparent, that men with different ideals and aims might come to power very soon? This House should take a detached view and not consider the fears of minorities as necessarily a disparagement of the present party or its leaders. Then he says that my second point is that the honorable members should place themselves in the position of the minorities and then try to appreciate those fears that they have expressed from time to time. He then also continued because suddenly the Sikh issue for him became very important. This is when the question of safeguard for minorities was decided in 1947. The question as regard the Sikhs was kept pending, as it was said that the result of the partition was not known very clearly then. The Sikhs were leaving the West Punjab under circumstances which are well known to everybody here. They had willingly suffered themselves to be vivisected and they elected to remain with India. They were marching on foot, leaving behind everything they loved. They were not coming alone. They had saved and brought 7 districts to the Indian Dominion, the full significance of leaving open the question of Sikh minority on 28th August cannot fully be understood when we look at those events. Now, this is something which was shocking for the Congress party leaders, particularly Vallabhbhai Patel. He immediately reacted. Let us look at. I don't have the time to do the analysis of what Patel said, but certain historical falsity also came into his speech. He says, I am just quoting in between. He says that if he refers to 1929 and then again to the partition of India and Pakistan, I wish to point out to him that there was not a single Sikh voice against partition. On the other hand, they are probably in the forefront in demanding partition of the Punjab. After the butchery and bloodshed that took place in Rawalpindi and Multan, the Sikhs were terribly upset and they had considerable sympathy from the Congress. At the same time, there were other tragedies happening in other parts of the country. And then came the conflagration in Lahore, Amritsar, and other parts of the Punjab. It was at that time with the concurrence of the states. Unanimously, with one voice, we agreed to the partition of India. Now, to turn around and charge us with a breach of faith in his charge, which I cannot understand, and it is not right for the Sikh community, a brave community like the Sikhs, to fling these charges at us. Who were we to agree to the partition of India and the partition of Punjab if the Sikhs were opposed? No, the thing is that partition of India was already decided. It was so clear. Sikhs had nothing to do with it. But this is what Patel said. Now, if we look at the period between 1946 and 1950, we find that it was a period of great social and political churning, out of which the ecstasy of independence and agreeing of partition form the two major events, and their inseparable relationship is quite obvious. Punjab and Bengal shared common destiny due to partition. Both were among the big states of India, and both were ruled by the Muslim League at the time of partition. The only distinguishing feature of Punjab was the presence of a sizable minority of the Sikhs who were rulers of the state at the time of its annexation by the British. The Sikhs excelled in their glorious martial tradition, which was exploited fully by the British. At the same time, as the Sikh historians tell us between the lines, the British decisively and significantly contributed to transform the syncretized religious tradition of the Sikhs into monolithic and exclusive tradition. The defined Sikh identity of keeping unshorn hair was strictly adhered to in the Sikh regiments. At the time of partition of the country, on the religious basis, the Sikhs might have nurtured high expectation out of the choice they made to remain with India. As a matter of fact, they did not have any choice, for they had constructed their history and mythology as a struggle against the Muslim rulers. Though the idea of Khalistan was floated in the early 1940s, the Sikh leaders, particularly the Akali leaders, expected a fair deal at the historical movement by way of assurance that their autonomy would be recognized. Still, there was a reason for expecting such a deal from the national leaders. The Sikhs were instrumental in substantiating the power of non-violent satyagraha as espoused by Gandhi immediately after the end of the First World War. The entire Gurdwara reform movement, starting from 1920, was fought by Akalis non-violently. It soon raised some of the radicals, such as Arjun Singh Gadgaj, that they organized the Babar Akali movement, which practiced violence for freedom. Interestingly, all Akali leaderships remained quite close to Gandhi, even after the enactment of the Gurdwara Act in 1925, after which the control over Sikh shrines was handed over to the SGPC, Sh੍ਰੋਮਣੀ Gurdwara Pranthak Committee. After the end of the Second World War, Gandhi lost his political influence within the Congress, but retained his moral appeal. The assassination of Gandhi in 1948 signaled the end of Gandhian era, and the Akalis were no longer morally compelled to cooperate and collaborate with the Congress. But for such a status, there was a need for re-articulation of this issue. Now, basically, I have illustrated this because I don't want to take very long time. We are already very late. So I think the moment we look at this particular part of history, particularly the Constituent Assembly debates between 1946 to 1950, and then subsequent the electoral politics. Professor Jagan Karade talked about mathematics, the numbers. Numbers became important. Even when the separate electorate issue came in 1930s, this supposed that they knew that number is less. Congress supported it. But whatever might have happened, there is no connection between separate electorate and the partition of country. We cannot establish it, number one. Number two, Patel is saying that it is because of the Sikhs that India was partitioned has no historical basis. Punjab partition had to take place because one of the communities had nothing doing. We will be part of India, that is the Sikhs. But what has happened? Let us go back to what Ambedkar said. Now, Ambedkar was saying two things. One was metaphorically, the other was politically. One was that majority has to behave responsibly. Now, one question which we should ask during the last 70 years, that has majority behaved responsibly? This is one thing. Whenever we talk about minority politics, first of all, we should understand it. Because I personally think that the kind of diversity in the politics of majority which came up, it started becoming more and moving more and more towards what we call it religion. This was one. Second is that it became very clear somehow, that is something which is available historically also, that certain political communities, certain religious communities, and certain minorities, let us say including Dalits, they started understanding that if we remain quiet and we do not articulate our interest in the political platform, then the serious issue is that we will be forgotten because the majority will try its best to hijack all what is happening in terms of marginalizing it, in terms of putting some other communities, because the categories used by so many in understanding it. We are already aware that neither the Muslims, nor the Christians, nor the Sikhs are monolithic religious communities. They were very diverse. But the kind of pressure which the political system put for their voices to be heard, because that I think something which started a particular kind of politics. It began with communitarian politics. Then majority also started working on it in terms of communal politics, and the interaction with communitarian politics and the communal politics led to a kind of a serious crisis, which we started facing immediately after that, with one very few exceptions where it might have occurred. So now we see that we have political parties who articulate this interest. Punjab always had a Akali Dal. Then we have Bahujan Samaj Party, which is also a kind of the whole question of minority, because this is how constitutionally they were defined, who had reservation. But we also had the rhetoric from majority communities that these reservations should go. And in order to hijack this, or rather marginalize this whole reservation for Dalits, they started with OBC, whereas this whole question of OBC and scheduled caste, this was debated in Constituent Assembly. And it was very clear that when we talk about backward classes, there are two kinds of classes. One are depressed classes, the other are other backward classes. And these other backward classes, they can be taken care of by various programs. But the story and the history of the scheduled castes, who are identified as scheduled caste, ex-untouchables, is very different. Their exploitation, their miseries are not simply backward. It has something to do with serious social stigma and social discrimination. So I think ultimately the way this political process moved and the way the economic development started taking place, you of course had capitalism, and suddenly the reservation issue, when the jobs started becoming scarce, that this whole issue became stronger, unless we have reached a point. Now we find that certain communities are getting targeted. We don't know that other minority communities will be targeted or not, but it has to change. And this whole question of change is something which I hope it would be debated in this conference. I thank the organizers. I have shared some of my views. In fact, I have taken parts of my lecture which I delivered at Nehru Museum Library. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. This is really context setting, that historical juncture, how it was debated in Constituent Assembly, you have brought in. And it's true that the time we have today will never be appropriate to discuss such a diverse issue of minorities. But I'm thankful that you brought in the context, and that brings an end to the opening session. I'm thankful to Professor Najma Akhtar, Professor Fatma Begum, Professor Jagan Karade, and Professor Paramjit Singh, that you gave your precious time and began the context setting to go and move on for panel discussion 1. I also request that I cannot name, but I'll request all of you commonly that if you remain here, that will be blessing and learning to all of us. I cannot request you that you still be there, but please stay around, and the discussion will be important because those discussions may be reflected in the different institutions as well. So with this, we end this session. Now I welcome Professor Sabyasachi here. Before I